Much. This is going to be a different presentation than what Keith just did, because this presentation that I'm doing today is really just the work that many of you have done over the course of a semester. And why I'm saying that is because I taught an engagement for the Common Good course here at Cabrini last semester, and it was called Advocating for Fair Trade. And essentially what students did was it was a research-based class, and what students did was they conducted research, collected data from 11 to 13 different institutions in the Philadelphia region. They were Catholic higher ed institutions, and they were in the Philadelphia region, and these were those institutions. The research or the data that they collected was data to determine awareness, participation, education, and even simply product offerings of the fair trade nature at each of the institutions. So they essentially, the students that is, they essentially looked at 7 different themes, and these are those themes. And based on that, they created a survey. And the survey had built-in questions around these themes. And I just thought that before I actually get into the actual data, I can just talk briefly about some of the questions that each of these themes addressed. Firstly, the products and providers, and it was really as basic as that. You know, what fair trade products do you offer on campus? Who are your bookstore providers? Who are your dining service providers? In terms of the events and activities, yes, what kind of fair trade events have you held? What kind of activities are ongoing at your campus? What does the participation look like? What does the success of these events look like? The theme of awareness focused on the level of awareness as it related to issues surrounding fair trade. So it was, yes, student awareness, but it was also faculty, staff, administrators. The focus was on the campus community as a whole. When we looked at student involvement, basically the questions surrounded, you know, clubs. Are there any fair trade clubs on campus? Are there any fair trade organizations? And if there aren't any fair trade clubs, then are there other social justice clubs or social justice organizations on campus that incorporate fair trade issues and create or organize fair trade activities? For faculty commitment, the basic questions surrounding faculty commitment revolved the classroom. So, you know, are there courses that are fair trade subject-related courses, you know, part of your curriculum? And if, again, there aren't fair trade-related subject courses, are there courses that have been created that, again, integrate or incorporate fair trade topics within those courses? The institutional commitment looks at whether each institution essentially supports the issues surrounding fair trade. And when the students looked at this, the questions largely stemmed from institutional support related to, you know, the curriculum, related to the mission, related to product offerings on the campus. And lastly, the future. Students asked respondents at these institutions, you know, what were their goals? What were their plans as it related to fair trade moving forward? And when, you know, I don't think that I had mentioned this, but when we talk about the respondents at these institutions, they came from a variety of departments, ranging from campus ministry to sociology to the business departments of many of these institutions to even academic affairs at some of the institutions. So there was really a wide variety, I thought, of interest from all of your institutions. And in saying that, in terms of faculty and administrators combined. So these were the major themes that the students looked at. So I don't know, hopefully you can see that. It's small and it's, hopefully you can see it. But in looking at the products and providers, I think the data actually is very interesting. When you look at first of all, the institutions as it relates to the products that are offered at these institutions, one of the things that becomes most apparent is that most of us at least carry coffee. And I thought that was very interesting. Now, not all of us, but most of us at least carry coffee at one point in the year through the semester at the very minimum. I also wanted to make a comment in terms of the products that are offered. There are also additional products that are offered at these institutions that may not be on this table because perhaps, they're only offered, at particular times of the year. So again, you might be sitting out there and saying, hey, wait, we have fair trade mangoes. I don't see fair trade mangoes. Well, yeah, that may be the case, but it's infrequent perhaps, or it's only at special times of the year. So at the very minimum, you'll see that coffee and coffee, tea, chocolate are certainly the most popular, but certainly we have institutions out here that are carrying a lot more fair trade products. And I think that is interesting as it relates to the dining service providers that we all have at our institutions, because one of the things that you can see here is that we have Sodexo represented quite a number of times. We have Aramark represented quite a number of times. And you'll also see that though there are different dining service providers, you'll also see that those campuses are offering different fair trade products. So it doesn't necessarily, the dining service provider isn't necessarily consistent with the types of products that are offered at these institutions. And the students found this to be very interesting as well. In addition, you can look at the bookstore providers. The bookstore providers were following that same theme where, you have, again, consistency. Follett with the bookstore provider at many of our campuses, as well as Barnes & Noble. And, quite a number of us also have university-owned bookstore providers as well. And I thought that I would separate out this idea of the bookstore offerings with the dining service provider offerings, because what we're seeing most of the time at these institutions where the bookstore provider is concerned, that if there is fair trade certified, okay, so they offer maybe sweatshop free, you're seeing a lot of Alta Gracia at these institutions, but fair trade certified chocolate is the main product that these institutions are holding. Okay, so this might be a little bit even more difficult, but not to worry. One of the reasons I was so excited about this research was that, I was going to be able to get a chance to see what everyone else was doing on their campuses. I was getting a chance to see what events are being held, what activities are being held at the different campuses. And so I thought that, especially since it is quite small, I thought that what I could do is just highlight all of those activities and events that are happening at all of your colleges so that, this is a way of just sort of gathering data for our own purposes so that potentially we can emulate what other institutions are doing moving forward. And in alphabetical order, this is, we have Cabrini that has the Fair Trade Volleyball Tournament every year. This was started by the Finance Club on campus, interestingly enough. And I guess we're in our 7th year now. And students are really, get really psyched about this volleyball tournament, sort of similar to Keith's Recyclemania, I guess, going on at St. Joe's. Where students are competing against faculty, staff, administrators, really everyone, the entire campus gets involved. And it's essentially building awareness for fair trade. And at that event, we have fair trade raffles, we have chocolate tastings, information sessions. We also have done in the past fair trade panel sessions where we look at the debate between, the idea of fair trade versus free trade and what that actually means. We also offer, different film events like The Dark Side of Chocolate, which many of you have seen and are surely aware of. At Chestnut Hill, they have a fair trade sales and information session once a semester. So what basically happens here is that they bring fair trade vendors to their campus and they sell their goods. So fair trade vendors like 10,000 Villages and so forth come to their campus, and it's again social justice issues that they're focusing on for the week, and fair trade is one of those issues that they're looking at. DeSales has basically their fair trade events surround Halloween and Valentine's Day with the fair trade chocolate. They do reverse trick-or-treating, and I know many of the campuses here as well have at least experienced that. In looking at Gwynedd Mercy, they have a fair trade bake sale and an informational event. Immaculata does a fair trade coffee house where they play music and they serve fair trade coffee. They also bring vendors, fair trade vendors to campus on an ongoing basis. They do a soccer tournament, again, integrating the idea of fair trade. The soccer tournament is Kick Poverty Out, and the funds or the proceeds from that event go to fair trade. They also do trips to Media, which we all know is a fair trade town. And then they have the Pulsera project that sells fair trade bracelets, and I think that is in Nicaragua. Where is Immaculata? It's in Nicaragua. So, you're seeing a lot of these are fantastic activities that we're seeing at these institutions. Newman has the Poverty Awareness Week, and again, social justice issues throughout the entire week, but they integrate fair trade into that week, and so they have a fair trade table, a trend table, I guess they call it, there at Newman. Again, fair trade chocolate sales before Christmas. Rosemont, they do fundraisers, and some of the proceeds of those fundraisers go toward the purchase of fair trade products. St. Joe's has hosted a fair trade fair where, again, the fair trade vendors come to their campus to sell the products. They actually had their volleyball tournament in preparation for the big kickoff later today for the volleyball tournament. So I guess those winners will be represented at the volleyball tournament today. And then lastly, Villanova, does a lot of great things. They're bringing vendors to campus. They are giving free mini chocolate giveaways. Again, building awareness of what fair trade is. Oh, this is great chocolate. They have fair trade sales where they discount fair trade products that they sell on campus. They also do raffles. They also do film events. So again, a lot of great activities going on at all of our institutions as it relates to fair trade. And the purpose of this, if you're sitting out there saying, oh, well, that's interesting, but the purpose of it is in terms of moving forward, looking at some of these ideas, certainly emulating some of these ideas, but also thinking, okay, well, let me think about what our issues are at my campus. How can we incorporate these aspects into, our campus life on an ongoing basis? Okay, so the awareness. In terms of awareness, this was very interesting because there are a large number of institutions involved in this consortium. And when you look at this, you see that awareness varies greatly. But one of the things that I was struck by when I looked at this data was that it wasn't just simply awareness, but it also was interest. So even though there was awareness at many of the institutions, what the data revealed, what the students were able to tell us from the data was that, yeah, I'm aware of what's going on. I'm aware of fair trade. I'm aware of the issues surrounding fair trade, but there was nothing getting them moving, nothing getting you moving in terms of, I want to affect change. Okay, I want to be a conscious, ethical consumer. And so that was a little bit more difficult to encourage, I think, from when looking at this data. So again, the awareness, from the awareness perspective, we saw there was limited to great awareness. It was growing, certainly, at many of the campuses, but still interest and organizing interested students, faculty, staff, administrators was a little bit more difficult than just simply, okay, yeah, I am aware of the issues. Okay, student involvement. When looking at the student involvement, again, you're going to see a lot of variation in terms of student involvement. For the most part, again, remember when I focused on those themes and the questions that students ask regarding, do you have a fair trade club on campus? You know, everyone, all of the institutions basically responded no. Cabrini just recently formed a fair trade club on campus, so it is in its infancy stages, and you know, but it has been created. Many of the campuses, though, have clubs on campus, are in using fair trade in those clubs on campus. They have incorporated the fair trade activities, the fair trade fundraising, the fair trade awareness into already current clubs. And again, I thought that I would just address some of those, like Chestnut Hill has a club which focuses on education in Uganda, but they also work with fair trade issues. DeSales has a club that looks at ending global poverty. Again, they incorporate fair trade issues. LaSalle and Villanova have CRS ambassador programs that focus on fair trade. Immaculata has environmental club. They have campus ministries. They have student government that also focus on fair trade. And Newman and St. Joe's, you know, have a small but a very powerful core group of students that are really moving the movement along at their institutions. Okay, again, the same in terms of student involvement, faculty commitment at the institutions vary in the same way. So you have some institutions that are, yes, offering fair trade courses, and then many of the predominant, most of the other institutions, in fact, have current courses that they teach, faculty have current courses that they teach where they incorporate fair trade issues. And again, you have the likes of Keith taking students to Nicaragua, focusing on fair trade specifically. Cabrini actually has a course going to be running in the spring of 2014, taking students to Costa Rica that focus on fair trade. But for the most part, the specific fair trade subject-related courses are not occurring at our institutions, which again is interesting. Instead, what we're seeing is the likes of, you know, Chestnut Hill, for example, including fair trade in their global studies seminars and their religious studies courses. DeSales incorporated it into their business courses. Cabrini incorporating it into their business courses, into their core social justice curriculum focused around engagement for the common good. And so in terms of the faculty commitment in teaching these courses, there seems to be, again, a strong commitment at all of our institutions, but it's a select few faculty. It doesn't seem to be the data reveals that there doesn't seem to be a great support for, you know, specific fair trade related courses, and it's really just, you know, topics that are looked at on different social justice type classes. So the one thing that connects all of our institutions today in this room is our mission, of course, and Keith talked a little bit about that, the idea of the focus on Catholic social teaching. This idea of a preference for the poor is certainly what links us together, and we can see that from this data. You know, so when the questions that students asked relating to institutional commitment, support for a curriculum, support for product offerings, you know, this aspect, the mission really came forward from all of the institutions. The answers from all of the respondents at all of the institutions, and you can see that really was just, this is our mission. It's an education of the heart, or it's teaching ethics, leadership, and social responsibility. This is the core to which connects all of us together. That's students, that's faculty, that's staff, that's administrators at all of these potential consortium institutions. And again, now finally, the last theme was the future. You know, in terms of the future, you know, what do we hope to obtain? And we had a couple colleges and universities say, well, I hope to eventually attain, fair trade university status. Cabrini certainly has the intention of obtaining fair trade university status. Villanova, I know, is near completion of fair trade university status. But that's not, for the most part, that's not where the rest of us, our focus necessarily is. For many of us, it's simply about, growing awareness, or it's, increasing, courses in terms of the course curriculum, expanding product availability at our campus. Growing student commitment was also an issue or a focus for many of you in terms of your future plans. Some of you are just hoping to more critically address, purchase behavior at your institutions. Whatever the case is, wherever we are, the idea is because we are connected by our mission and because we have that like-minded thought process around social justice issues, particularly fair trade, the idea is connecting, networking, sharing ideas so that whatever our plans, whatever our goals are for the future, that we can work together to help us attain our goals more quickly. Okay, so as I had gone through some of the data, we had, I had talked about what different parts of it mean. But firstly, the data, simply speaking, the data tells us that we are simply linked to these common goals, connected, by our mission. And we hope to benefit from each other in terms of not just this gathering today, but moving forward. We want to learn from each other. We want to, look at what we're doing, share, and from that, determine how we are going to move together as a potential consortium. You saw that in the very first slide that we have the varying degrees of fair trade commitment among the students, among the faculty, among the staff. But again, this is not a race, and it's not intended to be a race. I understand that essentially, we are competitors in the education market. But in terms of fair trade, we are committed to working together, to sharing our ideas and moving forward. So, the important point is that we have the strength in numbers and we can look to each other for support in that area. In terms of the common dining service and bookstore providers, yet we have different fair trade offerings. I think this was very telling information because a lot of us are under the assumption that it is the dining service providers determining, based on the costs of the products. And understand that, for example, many of us share Sodexo as our dining service provider, yet, there are some of us that offer coffee, and then that's the only fair trade product that we offer, whereas others have much more expansive list of fair trade goods that we offer. So I also think that it's a change in mindset, and we want to think about, are we asking the right questions? Are we, are we working with our dining service providers? Are we working with our bookstore providers to see, are there other alternatives within our budgetary constraints? Is this possible? And maybe we've just dismissed it thinking that it wasn't possible in the past because of the cost situation, but like Keith mentioned, there are many vendors out there, many suppliers out there, and the prices are becoming more and more competitive, and it is becoming a viable option for all of us. So again, I think a very important factor that came out of that data was this aspect of the providers and the products, and that disconnect and that lack of consistency between what is offered and what we offer. The next point is regarding awareness. So, the data again showed that awareness is low among many of the institutions, and it's even harder to garner interest even when awareness is there. So one of the questions that we might want to address today is exactly how we can better work together to build both the awareness, allow the continual growth for the awareness and interest to improve on our campuses. And again, in looking at this aspect in terms of awareness, you have to consider that course development, course curriculum, getting the students involved in these kinds of projects actually help and actually make a difference. So the budgetary issues preventing movement forward, this was not revealed obviously in the data that I presented to you today. We didn't see a line item that says budget, but without a doubt, every institution that students phoned, contacted, talked with, all said that they were constrained by budgetary issues. That, this was a common theme. We're a small college. We don't have the resources. We don't know what the cost differential looks like. And, we are, that's just the story of our campus at the moment. And so when you're looking at, when we're considering these issues, it is important that we're living in an economic environment today that, is more difficult than it certainly in the past. However, there are options, like I was saying earlier, with regard to the suppliers. And these are just something that we want to consider instead of just dismissing because of budgetary issues. Another factor with regard to the budgetary issues was, this idea of this gathering in and of itself, talking to each other, finding out, because we are a small college, because you are a small college, finding out how we can work together, how we can partner to alleviate some of those concerns. Okay, so in terms of moving forward, looking at what institutions, what I heard from my students that institutions were looking for, they simply, that is, want support. We want support from each other. We want guidance from each other. We want to be able to, create a cultural shift on our campus and to more openly embrace fair trade in a much fuller way. And in order to do that, we need support of one another. And that also goes with that third point regarding, learning from, not just the events, the activities, the products, but what each of us are doing on our individual campuses so that we can expand our own individual initiatives. And one of the things that just struck me when, I was talking to my students and they were talking to all of you was that, and we talk about awareness versus interest, and I feel like my own students personally became more interested, certainly more passionate about this issue once they started to connect with other institutions. Specifically, they had gone to Fair Trade Conference in Chicago last October, I guess, or November, and they were able to connect with students from St. Joe's. They were able to connect with students from Villanova, and not just from the Philadelphia area, but beyond as well. But just seeing other, adults their own age that are interested in the same issues, the same topics, really, energize them. And I feel like what we're doing today will do the same for the faculty at other institutions, the staff and administrators at other institutions, what others are doing, and we can talk about it, and we have the same thoughts and ideas in mind. It's energizing. So it's not just, the student connection, which I think is very important, but it's also the institutional connection, which is also important. Okay? So thank you. Can I answer any questions? Yes.